Joe Biden defending his disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, while former Obama officials are calling him out. And Biden is admitting, well, he could have helped create a new terrorism safe haven.
Can Al-Qaeda come back? Yeah, but guess what? It's already back other places. What's the strategy? Every place where Al-Qaeda is, we're going to invade and have troops stay there? Come on. 70% of American people think it was time to get out of Afghanistan, spending all that money. But the flip of it is, they didn't like the way we got out. But it's hard to explain to anybody, how else could you get out?
An image of sheer strength. Biden getting slammed by former Obama officials for making the terror threat in America worse.
The Taliban is harboring Zawahiri today. The Taliban is harboring al-Qaeda today. The Taliban winning the war in Afghanistan, and then the way our exit happened, has absolutely inspired jihadists all over the world. Not only will jihadists be inspired, but a lot of them are going to come to Afghanistan to be part of the celebration, to be part of Jihadist Central.
The most important thing for this president to do is to be willing to accept responsibility for the mistakes and to move on, and to basically do what is necessary now to protect our national security.
You know, Dana, you don't often see this, especially amongst Democrats, former Obama officials, CIA directors coming out and saying, accept responsibility because you just made the problem worse.
Well, and Leon Panetta repeated the point that he thinks that there was a mistake made or mistakes made, but you don't hear that from anyone in the Biden administration.
I don't think I've heard it once. Have
no,
you?
They're just, they've linked arms. It's Red Rover, send them over. And I mean, you're sending over Obama people. It reminded me of something, though, Pete. Do you remember during the campaign when Robert Gates, former Secretary of Defense, when his book came out, and he said Joe Biden has never been right even once on any foreign policy issue in the last 30 years? Mm-hmm. So that's very strong. And as I recall, there wasn't a lot of defense of the vice president at the time. Mm-hmm. People just they didn't pile on, but they kept their powder dry. They didn't say much, and I think this is part of that. I think Americans want to be on offense against al-Qaeda. When President Biden says, what were we going to do, invade every country that has al-Qaeda? No one's suggesting that. These straw men arguments are really frustrating. What Americans do expect is to be on offense against al-Qaeda wherever they are. And that doesn't mean invasion. And we can argue about Afghanistan and getting in and then the mission and all of that. But that, again, it's just a false equivalence there. The other thing I would say, last thing is, it took the botching of the Afghanistan hasty retreat to bring Americans together. You now have bipartisan agreement that that people wanted to get out of Afghanistan, but that it was handled terribly on the way out, and they're embarrassed by it. They're humiliated. They want the Americans to get out, the green card holders and those vetted special immigrant visas who helped us, for them to be able to get out, and it doesn't look like that's happening anytime soon, especially for those SIVs. And the last bipartisan point is that people do not feel more safe today than they did before 9/11.
Well, that's true. And Jesse, to what Dana just said, maybe the Obama officials knew who Joe Biden was all along. And they knew you put him in a situation like this where you have to make dynamic decisions. He's going to dig his heels in ultimately and place blame, I don't know, anywhere else.
When I see people like Morell and Panetta, I see Obama and I see Hillary. Notice Hillary and Barack have been dead silent since this thing broke out. And they're kind of speaking for Hillary and Barack. And that's significant. Break down the statement with me, Pete. Would you do me the honor?
Okay.
Can al-Qaeda come back? Yeah, but guess what? It's already back in other places. Does that make you feel safe, Pete?
It makes me feel great.
How about this? What's the strategy? Every place where al-Qaeda is, we're going to go invade and have troops staying there? Come on.
Come on.
That's the Biden doctrine. Straw man followed by a come on. That's like Dana saying, Jesse, I don't like your hair. Dana, you don't like my hair? Well, I'm just going to shave it off. Come on.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. No, that makes no sense. And then he feels, how else could you get out? Joe, turn on the tube, bro. Mm-hmm. Every pundit on television has been saying, you keep Bagram, you leave air support in while you pull out the allies and the civilians, maybe coordinate with NATO, and then get all the hardware out before the Chinese can steal it. Come on, man.
How could you get out? Maybe any other way, any other conceivable way. Is this a Democratic view, Jessica? What is the foreign policy of Joe Biden? What would Democrats say their foreign policy is right now if the acknowledgement is, well, al-Qaeda might just come back, but al-Qaeda's all over the place?
Well, I haven't heard anyone but the president say that. That's certainly not what Jen Psaki's saying. It's not what Antony Blinken was saying today. That's something that the president said in a very casual exchange with a reporter. I will give you that. It felt very casual.
On 9/11.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that anyone, if you looked at Joe Biden's schedule and the statement he put out on 9/11, I don't think that there's any way to think that he doesn't care about it or understand what happened on that day. So I really don't want to go there. He was at Ground Zero in the morning. He went to Shanksville. He released a great statement. So let's leave that. But as for the criticisms, what's more interesting to me about it is that you say these are Obama officials. They're Obama-Biden officials. It's an administration, right? Like they got picked by Barack and Joe together to do this job. And obviously people have their preferences and they say, you know, I want this guy, you want this guy or this gal. But those are people from your own team making that criticism, which is why I think the Biden administration has been extra quiet about it, because it's not just Democrats saying it, it's ones that you worked with for years, right? And people who you often worked with for decades, if you're in this kind of position, certainly in terms of foreign relations, since he was the chairman.
But that's what makes the criticism, Katie, that much more stinging, is that if they are trying to avoid it, they can't avoid reality, which is ultimately Michael Morrell saying, we've inspired jihadists. Right. Could Joe Biden actually act to take on al-Qaeda and this administration if necessary?
Of course he could. I mean, that's why we have the U.S. military. We have the capability to do this. They're choosing not to, Joe Biden. And I would say it doesn't matter if the press secretary is saying something or the Secretary of State is saying something that's different. And that's what we want to focus on. The president of the United States is in charge of the security of the country. It's the commander-in-chief's #1 job, is protecting Americans, especially from foreign threats. And this idea that he's saying, well, al-Qaeda is everywhere, so throwing up my hands, and it's a very defeatist attitude. And has this attitude from a position of weakness where we are relying on the Taliban to get people out. There are Americans left behind. His attitude should be, we will fight them wherever they are. We have the capability to do that, and they shouldn't mess around and find out. But instead he's saying, oh, well, what do you want me to do? That's your job. Your job is to do something.
Instead, we've been taking effectively orders from the Taliban. And you want to look at the future of our ability to strike. We don't have human intelligence. We have signals intelligence, which means you don't have all the ingredients you would normally have, which means you end up droning a aid worker with water bottles.
Right, we're getting
instead
intelligence
of an
from the
ISIS
Taliban.
suicide bomber.
Right.
Exactly.